Hello, everyone. This is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate, and I have just, a whole, pool of beautiful faces with me today of lovely women. And two of them are the daughters of someone I have recently interviewed. And during the process of getting to know Hayes-Thakore, she shared with me her biggest brag about her two daughters who were both in the space industry and had started out their careers learning a lot about space and technology. And I knew immediately I had to bring them to you all to get to know and share a little bit about what they're doing there, because it's the young people in these spaces, these technical spaces, that are moving us forward. And Shelley knows that because she mentors young ladies and people in the space industry. So what I have here, or who I have here, is you'll see T and B. And so T is Tejal Thakore, I hope I said that correct, out of Germany. She's living in Germany now. And B Hayes-Thakore, who is situated in the UK. So raise your hand. T, raise your hand. Okay, that's T. The other one is B. Also with me is someone who should be a familiar face to you because we've interviewed her on Frontrunners Innovate not too terribly long ago. And this is Shelley Brunswick, and she is the COO of the Space Foundation. And we really kind of dismissed a lot of miscommunication or misideas about what the Space Foundation was and what it does when we interviewed you. But I wanted you to give like a capsule of who you are and what the Space Foundation is, so that there's a relationship between you and the girls here as we get started. So Shelley.
Fantastic. Well, so exciting to be joining you today. And what a fun conversation we're going to have with T and B. So I can't wait. As you said, I'm Shelley Brunswick. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Space Foundation. And the Space Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit that does business internationally through our three main divisions. We are your trusted source of information, education, and collaboration through our Symposium 365 division, our Center for Innovation and Education, and our Global Alliance division. So one of the things, as Mary knows, is I'm also a UN Office of Outer Space Affairs, Space for Women mentor, as well as a Women Tech mentor. So I'm excited to be on the call today. Look forward to learning more from T and B, because you always learn when you are a mentor. It's a two-way street.
Oh, yeah.
You learn just as much from the proteges, and then many of them end up becoming lifelong friends. So I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Well, great. Thank you very much for that. And I really appreciate you being here with us. So I'm going to ask, which of the girls is the older, T or B?
B. B is 7 years older than
older
me.
One. Okay. Hence, you get to go first. And I wanted to do it that way because there is a relationship to how you two ended up getting into sort of the same pathway. And I wanted you to be able to share that from your perspective as being the oldest first, and then she can share it from her perspective when she came along. But B, please help us understand a little bit about your background and what brought you into the technical work that you do, because you do communications, you do technology, you do marketing, and you work with partnerships, and a lot of this is in the telecommunications space, but it began elsewhere. And so I want you to share a little bit about that, if you will.
So thank you very much for inviting us, Mary and Shelley. It's wonderful to hear about the work that you're doing. So in terms of background, I first earned my master's in aerospace engineering in the UK, having done my studies, my school and high school in India. And during my time studying aerospace engineering, I got involved in the Space Generation Advisory Council. At the time, I just missed out on the 1999 Space Generation Foundation being established, but was really, really interested in the mission to take young people's voice into space policy, into informing where the science agenda should be for missions to come ahead. And it was a little bit of a side project because the master's that I was doing did not contain as heavily a space component. So I took it upon as a hobby to really kind of dive into it. And it's a wonderful organization that provided me the opportunity to then become the regional coordinator for Asia Pacific, which I served for a number of years and multiple variations of leadership roles within that, and ended up also working as a teaching associate and researcher at the International Space University. So that gave me a very interdisciplinary start in my early career. My early career was to do with robotics, particularly robotics that involves a full system, including the launch, the communication, the actual operations of it. And the best analogy I can give for anyone is that it's like a mining robot on the moon or Mars or an asteroid. And those formed the basis of my engineering that I then developed into more interdisciplinary and aspects. And I got to work with Lego, who you might know as a household toy company, but at the time was really looking at what is happening in technology and how do we bring that in a very interdisciplinary exchange to drive innovation, both in business as well as in, electronics or computing. And that set me off on a path that allowed me to incubate companies like and products like Raspberry Pi. So this is a small single board computer, and it started off as an educational project, but now is something that is the standard for tracking the International Space Station or building a low-cost computing device that might sit in diverse kind of applications. And that's brought me really as someone who has a very non-linear career path. And I generally describe myself as a technologist and a generalist. So it's really nice to be able to step with a perspective of other sectors and also step into the shoes of customers that might be looking at broader areas of change across their business. And through that work, I've been a board member of the Planetary Society since 2008. I think at the time I was the youngest board member at any kind of global advocacy group. So I really took upon myself, as people like me don't normally get jobs like this. So it is something where I do need to encourage more women, more underrepresented communities to seek out such pathways. And I think both of those organizations have been instrumental in helping take the science and the incredible discoveries onto, sort of everyday Facebook pages that people can consume. So that's something I'm very passionate about. And in my kind of, I call it day job because I actually do 3 jobs. So I don't believe in a normal 5-day working week or 7-day working week. I work as is flexible. So I work for Keegan, who is a security provider into integrating security in Internet of Things. Mm-hmm. And that's an organization that works extensively in an ecosystem. So there's a lot of innovation that is being driven by connectivity coming into everyday things. And that's what we help secure in multiple forms: the data of it, the devices themselves, giving them an identity and making them really traceable and identifiable across, making them authentic sources of data. And I'm also trustee for Jangala, who's a nonprofit that provides internet to crisis management situations. So we provide a set-top box that can deploy Wi-Fi very easily into earthquake zones or refugee centers. Also, we provide that to remote schools for education purposes. And that is about bringing accessibility of technology and the internet to those that are really underserved by the normal constructs of how information is a human right.
Yeah, very well put. I like that. Well, okay. So, now T.
But I must say, T is more impressive.
I'm already impressed. I don't know about Shelley, but I'm already impressed. So T, it is your turn, my dear. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mary, first of all, giving me the opportunity to participate in this interview. It's brilliant to collaborate with, even my sister, because I have been collaborating her all my life, I think. But to actually have a platform and speak about it, it's really great. And also really great to meet you, Shelley. So as similar to Bee's journey, I did my high school in India. And for further studies, I came to England, did my bachelor's in Kingston University in astronautics. And that was greatly inspired by my sister. She was already studying at that time in ISU, and that kind of, I actually participated in some of the classes that my sister took at ISU in Vancouver as we were visiting her just for vacation. And that kind of inspired, those lectures inspired me to continue my interest in astronautics. And through my bachelor's, I, of course, with the help of my sister, I got involved in SGAC, Space Generation Advisory Council, as she mentioned. And I particularly got interested in leading a Move an Asteroid competition. It is part of the Near Earth Objects framework that SGAC was quite leading in. And I ran that for about 5 years. And through that platform, I also got involved in space disaster management and space debris. So 3 of the most hot topics of that time. And you know, you collaborate with so many students, so many organizations, you meet so many people. So through that network, I wrote a lot of papers for IAC, for SGC. And that kind of gave me a lot of information to kind of venture out in the real world. And I did an internship at Clyde Space in Glasgow, which was mainly related to AIT, so phase CD of a small CubeSat project that was funded by UK Space Agency. And there my interest, or kind of like the spark of 2 subjects developed. In a normal engineering degree, we have some gaps. And those gaps are related to AIT, because you basically learn just a small part of it, maybe just a half a course you have on. And the other is operations, space operations, which is a very large part of a space project, and that is absolutely not taught. So I thought in order to learn about it, I will work in the area. After doing my ISU, where I kind of focused on life sciences and human factors engineering, I decided to start a job in Munich at the Galileo Control Center. As you know, Galileo is a navigation program funded by EU. And I started as spacecraft controller, quite doing a shift pattern of 24/7 and providing support for operating spacecrafts. And through that, I kind of gained a lot of goals, I would say. So, for example, I was one of the youngest people to ever send a ping to a spacecraft in medium Earth orbit. And thereafter, I worked quite hard. I started operating ground stations, started becoming a systems engineer, but mainly focused on space operations. And in the end, I was a systems operations engineer, taking care of platform and payload, mainly focusing on spacecraft operations. And as I learned the hard way, in operations, you have really high learning curve at the beginning, and then slowly it kind of goes quite neutral. And I was quite young to have this neutral position. And so I decided to kind of go and do a master's degree. So I decided I got admission in Bremen University, which was quite challenging because it was also partially in German. So I had to learn, through my years, I learned a bit of German, but that was a crash course. And graduated first in my class, first actually in the first one to ever graduate with higher marks, because this was the first year that the degree was taking place. So it was a new degree. They collaborate. So 3 entities collaborated: DLR, ZARM, and OHB, and University of Bremen. And through these organizations, we got a lot of opportunity to work with different projects. And one of my master thesis was on large-scale greenhouse structure for Martian environment. So it was more on concept development and using AHP method to find the best design for such environment. Shortly after, I started to go back and think, I have, 5 years experience in operations. What do I want to do now? And now the second subject that I thought is not taught at university, AIT, and it's very hands-on, very engaging. So I decided to join Airbus as an external employee for optical Earth observation payloads. I'm a functional engineer, which means that when we have, so in any model, let's say spacecraft, you have software and you have hardware. And I'm basically responsible for all the electrical and functional integration of hardware and software. Currently, I'm working on 2 projects simultaneously, which just takes up a lot of time and effort. They are both part of the Copernicus program from EU, Sentinel-4 and Sentinel-5. They provide specifically data, or they will provide once they are launched. They will provide data for air quality and atmospheric composition, and ozone layer mapping, and climate change. So for 10 years, these satellites will give us data that will allow us to have concrete information to build laws that actually enforce climate change. Yeah. And just last point, I'm almost finished. I also host monthly roundtable meetings. I started this quite recently, since October 2021, so very recently. And it's basically a forum to encourage and inspire women to go into STEM subjects. But I not only focus on young age, but I also focus on women who have trouble going from middle, let's say your middle career, to that senior position. Because there are so many gender biases and so many things that are, and ideas that are working against us. And this forum, the idea of this forum was basically to find and collaborate with women who have already reached there, that can help women that are trying to get there. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing.
Big plate loads, both of you. That's pretty amazing. And I think that you made a good point at the end there, particularly T, about the gender biases. And I'm sure Shelley can speak to that. So I'm going to kind of turn it over to her about that a little bit. Questions, comments, Shelley?
Well, I actually wanted to back up just a little bit and say both of you had opportunities to join organizations, and that those organizations help lead you on your pathway. Obviously, one is Space Generation Advisory Council. You talked about ISU, the International Space University. So for our audience who might be listening, who've never heard these terms, maybe they want to be part of space, share a little bit more about maybe those organizations and how people get involved. And are there other organizations that if somebody wants to come into space or interested in space, but how do they join an organization? Who do they join? What would you recommend to them?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So absolutely, these organizations, the opportunity and the exposure they brought are instrumental in so many of our lives, and we still keep, we form lifelong friendships from many of that we volunteered with. And Space Generation Advisory Council is a membership organization, but it's something where you can get started in a very kind of easy way. So you can go onto the website, get source out projects that you might be interested in, work groups that you can collaborate, and you can do that via email, you can do that via online sessions. So one of my takeaways from about 20 years of work with Space Generation Advisory Council was that there is very little barrier in terms of, a lot of organizations are physical. You need to be somewhere where something like this exists to access that opportunity. But I have worked with people who I've never met sometimes, but also I've worked with young people in Jamaica, young people in Indonesia, in Kalimantan in Indonesia, where the internet is their only access to talk about stars to someone, where they actually had only one school, and then they were using resources and the dialogue they were having at Space Generation Advisory Council to bring it to their local community. So that's one. There's also obviously Planetary Society I talked about. That is a membership organization you can get started with. Again, the resources that are available from the Planetary Society are on the website to planetary.org. And they are free to access. You can join the Facebook page. Those are also ways in which you can start getting involved. It is a membership organization, so a small annual fee is for your membership. But what it also does, it allows citizens like you and I to have a voice to educate people in government, senators, etc., to have a voice around space policy and advocacy. And then there's also, for anyone else wanting to join, there are, local libraries, science groups, seek those out, because I think volunteering at a museum or volunteering at a science center can open, again, a similar network of many people that might be like-minded or might bring very different perspectives as well. And then there is also a lovely organization, which is the Association of Science and Outreach Centers. And this is actually like any biology museum or science museum, space museum, those kind of things that can take educational materials over. But I think actually, even if you do want a physical kind of place to go to, start with your local library, start with your local science community or museum or somewhere like that. And that could potentially help you find other organizations that might also, like Space Foundation, offer ways in which to get to know the space industry. And I'd say also get to know more role models and more pathways to other sectors too. T, I'm sure you have some other ideas, being the STEM ambassador you were.
So there are a couple of organizations that have helped me personally. One of them was UK SEDS, but this is basically US SEDS. I think there is different SEDS around the world.
SEDS is Students for Exploration and
Development in Space. Yeah. And I was, so I can tell you about UK. because that's what my experience was. So every university, so there's a UK SEDS, which is kind of like an umbrella, and every university has a SEDS of their own. So where students can come together, plan projects, do concept development, most all in space, because that's what my career has, or my studies was focused on. And so I was a representative of the Kingston University Students in Exploration and Development in Space. So it was called KU SEDS, but I'm sure there were students from Cambridge University, there were students from Cranfield University, from Glasgow University, and they all, UK SEDS does something similar to SGC, so the Space Generation Congress, and the IAC, International Astronautical Congress, where you have a conference that brings all the students in the UK together to collaborate, to learn what projects that they're doing, what help they can do to each other. One of my first conferences was UK SEDS conference. And that was on my foundation year of my engineering course. And thereafter, through Bees Connection, I went into, I was in Glasgow for SGC and IAC. And there, of course, you start building this network. So for space, I think that's a really good, good organization that I would recommend. The other one that I found in Bremen was the Women in Aerospace organization. There is a Europe version, and I think there is also a US version. At least in the Europe version, they always do monthly meetings where basically you can make good connections and find your role. That's a really good organization as well. And there is also remind me, there is Asia Pacific organization, right?
So there are lots of chapters of SGAC, as well as there is also a Young Ambassadors program that is associated with UN, and that also brings multidisciplinary youth volunteers together. And that, again, is a local chapter that you can seek out. And another one, another organization that anyone who is looking to start into a career in space might look at is also the Brook Fellowship, and that also has lots of chapters. Again, Shelley, as you are so passionate about mentorship, that has a strong network of mentors across multiple industries, and is looking at really helping bring in more diversified talent and seek out individuals that are from communities that we don't see very often represented in the workplace or represented in these high-tech careers. But certainly, I think one of the ways in which I see now we have is previously when I started volunteering for Space Generation Advisory Council, email was your only tool. And we all used it super seriously. We gave it time to read through multiple pages of emails and dialogue and exchanges of ideas and bringing new perspectives into something that we may not have thought about. So that was part of the growth. And that's part of, I think, what has firmed up so many of us as personalities that are open to ideas left, right, and center. and I think that's one of the things. Now we live in a world where this is available to you on, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, WhatsApp, so many different and online. I'm sure there are platforms even I'm not aware of, but there are more opportunities. And one of the things that I think is also worth mentioning here is it doesn't have to be about space. It doesn't have to be about, there are astronomy clubs, and they are really, really interesting, where it might not be a dialogue about the specific science, but it might actually be something that is more of a cultural interest that you have. So, you know, from anywhere from philosopher to artist to someone who is very interested in the technical career around whether space payloads and launch capabilities, etc. There are more means that are opening up. And I think the one way to do this is also ask questions and, you know, try and seek out networks like yours, Mary, because you have such a diverse group of people who are talking about innovation and kind of like what's happening out there. So it opens up, you know, YouTube is another channel where such information is available now to get started.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And one thing I would like to point out is that all of these organizations that we mentioned, SGAC, ISU, IAF, UKSETS, they all provide scholarships. And this is, I benefited personally from this. Sorry?
That's important. Thank you for sharing.
That's, I mean, a lot of students, girls, especially coming from developing countries, they don't have funding to go to these courses or go to this, have these opportunities as we did. And scholarships opens that path up. Even for me, I was given I was granted the ISU scholarship to do the SSP and masters, and I greatly benefited from that because at that time I was just a student. I could not have afforded. I think it was 36,000 euros for a whole course. That's quite a lot of money for a student. So yeah, I think scholarships are kind of a really good way into a path into
And I would say for anyone who's looking to apply for a scholarship for any of this, you know, whether it's to go to a conference, you can find funding for that, access those opportunities. Similar to T, I went to ISU on a scholarship, and one of the things within that is that I didn't get through the first time. So keep applying and be persistent.
Yes.
Learn from what you didn't make through, because you can always ask for feedback.
Very good. Shelley, do you have a response to that? I know you asked the question. Is there a response or a follow-up on that?
Well, lots of great information. I did want to say you kind of brought up some things that people don't think about. You know, you talked about volunteering. You know, sometimes people think, oh, I get a mentor or I do this, but you also talked about how you volunteered to do things. And sometimes volunteering is a great way to, as you said, go to events, network. Tell us about the volunteering opportunities and what role do you think that plays in helping people come into the space industry or elevate their careers?
Yeah, I think volunteering has always been a core part of, I think, our family. It's something that we saw our parents do a lot growing up. And so it's about how do you give back, or how do you even step into the community? And I think that's something that has stayed with us as a sort of life principle, in that I think part of the opportunities were to, one, there is an access thing. So you need to go and access the right one. So feel free. I think anyone who's interested in starting out a little shy on where to begin, feel free to seek out lots of different opportunities, try and test it out. And then find the way you can get engaged with, because I think volunteering brings a real life experience. It's a sort of lived in experience of the challenges you're going to solve, the dialogues you will have, how you bring value to those, to solving those problems. And we've talked about Space Generation Advisory Council and Planetary Society, who I volunteer for. I also volunteer as the trustee for Jangala. I'm starting to volunteer for St. John's Ambulance to learn more about mental health and first aid and emergency crisis management. So I think that's been an integral part of us. And it's what it also teaches you is other life skills that you can take back and find yourselves, you know, when you're leading teams, etc. There are many things that are called upon for your leadership. And I think one aspect of this is also how do you create a platform for others to bring in their ideas. And I think that volunteering has been a very critical part of enabling that. But I know T's also volunteered very extensively. So any other ideas, feel free.
So I can kind of recount my experience during my time volunteering at SGAC. So I started as I mentioned in Glasgow. I attended the SGC. That was basically an application interest to take part in something that I had never thought about, near Earth objects. And so I and my sister, we both were at the same conference, but in different groups. So I could actually kind of come out of that, you know, be a little bit more independent. And it's not negative. It's just gave me an opportunity to develop on my own and actively take part in the project group. And just from my interests and my ideas and my will to do more, they were basically looking for a person to lead this competition, because it's a very segregated subject there, and most of the entries that you get, they are PhD students who have written and researched in this area. So I took that opportunity, but for me it was not just, oh, you know, it's something that I do or something I can put in my CV, but it was the whole planning of the competition. It started with doing costs, budgets, and going back to the context that I had made during the conference, in order to ask them, what do they think of the competition? What needs to change? What do we need to get more? And taking all these ideas, planning the competition, that gave me a lot of project planning skills. And in the end, you also have to make sure that, okay, you have the funding now, but you need to have a place, a placeholder at the IAC, because it's a competition. So almost 2 or 3 months before the competition, you still don't know who the winner is. So you need to have a place. So you need to build this kind of a trust relationship with the committee of the, I think it's called the subject. So the part of the technical group, basically. And this gave me also relationship skills, a professional relationship skills. I was 19 when I started this, and I had absolutely no idea how to collaborate with people, how to keep the connections active, in order to, if I need something in the future, my relationship is good. Professional relationship, of course.
Art.
But of course, in any networking, you don't just meet somebody and you have a connection at that point and that's it. It's not like this. You have to you have to put effort into that that connection. And these all soft skills I learned from my time at volunteering, basically.
Yeah. That's important. The soft skills in any development and any career path, no matter what you're doing, is going to be, you know, critical. I wanted to ask you girls if there was anything coming up in the next 6 months that you felt like was a project. Just pick one that you think that you want to share a little bit with us about. And T, let's start with you, since I started with B before.
In the next 6 months, I'm not sure about a project, but I know there are a couple of ideas that are very trending and have been trending for a while, but I think it's going to be not just a concept, but a reality. And that's refueling in space. And that's quite congregated to launchers. But as we've seen in the last 2-3 years, even through COVID times, the launching systems have achieved milestones, and especially the force of private sector in the rocketry is kind of like pushing what we were relying on technology that is older than 40 years we were relying on, and now it's so many launching systems are there, and I think the next big thing is going to be refueling space. And this way you would not have satellites only for a specific period of time, but also for longer. You can extend their life. Of course, this is coming from operations and in IT, so yeah. And one of the life limiting items on any space object, let's say, it can be a launcher, it can be a satellite, it can be anything, is fuel. If we run out of fuel, we cannot maintain the orbit. If we run out of fuel, it's basically dead. So I think this is going to be something big that's going to happen in the next 6 months.
Wow.
Or maybe I would say a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
You agree? I see Shelley shaking her head, maybe.
It's a really big area of satellite servicing. There are a number of companies that are looking into that, as well as orbital debris removal. So there's kind of two big areas with orbital debris removal. How do we do that? Lots of room for space lawyers to help figure that piece out as well, because who owns what when we do that? But then obviously, how do we keep the satellites going longer? How can we reuse the satellites? Some satellites are going to die, but can we do manufacturing in space and resalvage some of the satellites that have become obsolete and reuse those parts? So because the biggest expense is getting off the Earth. And so once it's already in orbit, can I repurpose it? And then that brings in the whole idea of robotics. You know, obviously we're not going to send people up there to do manufacturing. We're going to probably have robotics and artificial intelligence. And do people put on their virtual reality glasses and go to work every day and they're operating their robots in space? So there's a lot of forward-leaning thought process. And so I think T has highlighted, you know, orbital servicing of satellites is a great thing, and it's going to unlock all this other area of manufacturing in space, orbital debris removal, AI. How do we do that manufacturing in space? So it's going to be really exciting in the next, like she said, 6 months to a year. There are a lot of companies that are looking at this. I see more and more companies that are launching, not into orbit, but launching into their seed round funding to do these type of services. So it's, you know, where 4 or 5 years ago it was like, now it's reality.
Wow. Yeah, I have a client that does the 3D printing thing, and he's got a contract with NASA, and NASA's the one that put the money into his study in the first place so that they could 3D print their parts while they're up there.
Exactly. I mean, you can't, this isn't going to be like, you know, the supply warehouse where I need a part and I walk out to the supply warehouse. It's going to be, I'm in space. I can't bring everything with me. So what can I bring? And then can I manufacture it? Can I 3D print it there? Not just in space, but even as we think about cislunar orbit and the moon or Mars, we can't bring everything with us. How can we prepare for what we might need to 3D print when we're there?
The basic stuff, for sure.
And also, how do we reuse things that might already be there? So there is a lot of resources that you could repurpose, obviously. It's not only the domain of 3D printing, but there's a whole bunch of applications around processing, repurposing the right type of materials so that we don't have to launch everything, which clearly is still an expensive proposition.
Actually, a very good point, because the department that I work in, they built and tested the near-spec instruments on a James Webb Space Telescope. So we, as a department, we went through a huge milestone. It was all built in-house, but through the manufacturing process, in AIT is also quite old school. We try to do a little bit innovation now and then, but most of it is, things work, why change? And in middle of manufacturing the honeycomb structure for the near spec instrument, we had a damage, and so it was too expensive. I think it was just too time consuming. It would have, because it was on a critical path. The project, the AIT part was on critical path of the space project. So they decided to 3D print part of the honeycomb structure that needed to replace. Now this is I think this is quite an innovation already. Because especially with ESA and NASA regulations and the strategies that they put out, or the requirements they put out, this is absolutely not in line with, and it was approved. So yeah.
That's very good. Very good. Well, thanks for that example. I'll share that with my client. B, did you have something coming up in the next 6 months? You want to tell us?
Absolutely. I think the next 6 months are really, really exciting. So one of the things I'm working on with both the Planetary Society and multiple other organizations is to how do we take a model around citizen advocacy to multiple countries who may not have a space agency yet, or might want to create the sort of pathway to help their countries understand what their role in space exploration, in satellite applications or communications could be, and stand up that capability through the grassroots organizations like the ones we talked about before, like those that are, open for volunteers to start working on their interests. So it's really around helping create a toolkit and a set of resources that help communities to voice and channel the business case for a space agency to their own countries. And that the purpose of doing that is also that it will bring more international exchange, and it will create a more level playing field for people who haven't had the opportunity to access the discoveries or the opportunities in space with all the exciting things that we just mentioned. And the second one is that I think we are in an incredible, new age. And there's a lot that's happening that we might read in the news and sort of feel a little not in high spirits about. But from a science point of view, this is really a completely an amazing age to be alive in. So we've just seen this last week was a bumper week in terms of science discoveries, right? We had one study that articulated exactly the event and the time correlated with the extinction of the dinosaurs when an asteroid, the asteroid that caused the extinction, in fossil evidence, right? And at the same time, the next day, within like 24 hours, we got to see the first photograph of the supermassive black hole that exists in the center of our galaxy. So we are getting a glimpse into our past as well as our very distant future of our galaxy in 1 week through these science discoveries. And I think with a lot of what we're learning about exoplanets, this is an area that is so rich for young people to be asking the questions of, what does it take to travel to a distant galaxy? What does it look like at an exoplanet of this nature? And of course, there's a lot of science happening around this, but I think there's room for so many questions that we may not have even asked yet. And so I'm looking to work with a network of educators, again, just, across, there's no limit to or no constraint on where they can be, but I'm looking to create ways in which we could open up these areas of science discovery to kids of school age and even young professionals to start asking where new discoveries may come from.
Beautiful. I'm going to have Shelley answer to some of that, because I think you spoke directly to some of the things that mostly interest her. So I'm going to let her have the last word on that. But T, she just shared really who she's looking to communicate with or connect with. T, are there any particular specific types of people that you want to connect with, or that would make a difference to your level of impact as you move forward?
Yes. In the roundtable that I'm hosting, I would like to get or involve more senior ladies, I would say, or women in STEM subjects,
Okay.
and to bring in this let's say committee of experienced women to help and encourage women that are already interested in STEM subjects, but they don't know how to, or not, they don't know, but they find it difficult in order to move from different experience levels in their career. Mm-hmm. And this, I think Shelley is a great contact that I have had pleasure. Thank you, Mary, again. And I really look forward to collaborating with you. And if you have a network of women in senior positions, then it would be really great to get you involved. And mostly my sessions have focused on kids and young kids who how we can push them into STEM subjects. So I would like to focus the next few sessions about this subject, which is very different to what we have spoken about, but it is still a gap. I feel that there is a gap because I have experienced gender bias. I've experienced someone calling me, "Oh, you're slow because you're a woman." And some of my, this is an experience, but I'm not pointing fingers. Is I tried to deal with the situation as I felt best, but if there was somebody I could talk to, that would have been really great, because I mean, I spoke with B, she knows, and she gave me great advice. But I'm lucky I have a sister who is in this position and can help me. But there are so many people who aren't, and I would not like to live in a world where my kids have to just swallow these comments, you know, and to actually have a platform that, you know, is open. Even men are involved. Like in my roundtables, I've had 4 fathers who are passionate about getting their girls into STEM subjects, but it would be also nice to have couple of sessions on that subject, because that is what drove me to start this roundtables.
I think one area we haven't really spoken about is intergenerational leadership. And one of the things, this connection is built because you spoke with our mom. And hopefully we can put you in touch with other young people that also have interesting things to share. But part of this is we are all living much, much longer career lives. and the workplace as well as we need to adapt and learn how to make room for conversations that can be difficult, but all in all will improve the way in which everyone can be productive, bring their best ideas, get the get the outcomes which are the larger than the sum of the parts. And I think the conversation about women leaders is really important, even if it is degendered, because it creates a level playing field for any group that is underrepresented. There's research that shows us that if there is less than 30% representation of a group, then typically those the issues that matter to them will not show up in any conversation. So part of this is really, really important work that is about, well, use whatever moniker you want, break the glass ceiling or pyramid or what, but it is important. It is important to create also more role models that can give you the tools to not be defined by a label, to not stand up to any comments that actually get in your way of doing your work well. And these can only help us evolve our work environments into a better place. So I think that work is really, really important. I'd encourage anyone who's interested to get in touch with T, but also start those dialogues in your community.
Yeah. And B made a really good point. Age bias is really evident. I started working in a professional environment at 23. I was a full-time engineer in a team of where the oldest person was 63, and after 3 years I was a team lead. And this kind of created so much, let's say, I don't want to say conflict, but a conflict within.
Tension.
Tension. Or, I mean, not really. The person that I worked with was very, very nice, but within, I had this conflict that how can I tell this person what to do when he has such so much experience? Yeah, and I still face that day to day. I work with people younger than me, and I work with people far older than me, and I'm basically training to be their replacement when they retire. And this, I don't know how that feels to them. So it's also the empathy part, that you need to understand that this might be difficult for them, because while they started this position quite late in their career, you're starting quite early. And this might there's just it's
you're gonna bump into some awkwardness there. But never let that get you down. That's for sure. Ladies, it's time to end up, but I want to give Shelley the last few words to end us up. So Shelley, floor is yours.
Well, thank you so much. It's been such a fun conversation. And again, I liked our intergenerational conversation. And it's really good to bring diversity to the table. And many times people think diversity is just men or women, or it's just different ethnicities, but it's really also about, as you said, bringing in the different age groups and then getting different perspectives and ideas to share those ideas in a safe and trusting environment, because then we can all grow. And as we look at planet Earth, as well as exploration of outer space, we have some major challenges to solve. And the only way we can solve those is by bringing everyone to the table. So I thank you, Mary, for bringing us all to the table today. And I look forward to the next discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Shelley. Thank you, girls, for being with us. T and B, Thakore. Yes. And we really appreciate the comments, the information, and the motivation and inspiration you provided for other young people out there who are looking into this, this industry to get into. And Shelley, next time for sure, we'll have another conversation. And ladies, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody else if you want to stay on for just a second. And I'm going to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, go to www.frontrunnersinnovate.com, where we'll share this and also the audio podcast version of this. So that those of you who want to walk and drive and listen, you can do that. So it'll live in a couple of 3 different places. But a lot of the, what I'd like to do, ladies, is the the organizations that you all mentioned, if there's any way you can send me the links to those, I'd love to provide that. Since we did mention them in content here, I'd like to provide that. So it would make it easier for anybody who wants to jump into that they can go right ahead on it. So I'd appreciate that. So I'm going to say again, goodbye, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And goodbye. Bye.